Welcome Dr. Ejaz Rasool, and thanks for sparing time for this meeting. Could you provide us some background to your work on the understanding of the Quran as a system of deen and the significance of the human self-development?
Thank you very much for inviting me to share my understanding and thoughts on the Quran. I have studied the Quran quite extensively since 1991. Initially, my exposure to the Quran was through some of the scholars who had written some expositions in Urdu. But later on, somewhere around 1993-94, I met a friend of mine who gave me the book, Islam, A Challenge to Religion by Parwez. And when initially I was quite skeptical and suspicious of what was written, because it was written quite different from the religious background in which I was brought up. But when I looked at the Quran and these books, what was discussed in terms of human problems, then I could relate with the human problems. I was in the UK at the time, and I could see the world more closely, should I say, or more in detail than when I was in Pakistan. So that helped me as well to relate the Quranic message or guidance with the situation on the ground. I also started studying my own self, should I say, our own psychology, somewhere around 2004. And I studied extensively and looked at my own self and also looked at the outlook of others, and read a lot of papers and books like Eric Fromm and Carl Rogers. Even Jordan Peterson recently has written a book, 12 Rules of Life. So all these helped me to develop a vision and understanding of my own. And I looked at my own issues and also the issues and problems of other human beings. And this helped me to see the Quran in a different perspective. I said that here are human beings, they have these natural or inborn difficulties, and their default position is emotional, and they follow their desires, and their intellect helps them to accomplish those desires. And because of these desires, and their intellect, there is a battle of wits going on in the world. And the problems we see in the world, and divisions, and might is right, and injustices, inequality, poverty, and all these issues are because of this. Because essentially, the Quran puts forward, says there are only two concepts of life. One is that the life ends with death, and there is the concept that the life which goes beyond death. And the Quran presents hereafter as a factual reality. It says it is part of it, because if we look at our cognitive level, or at our thinking level, where we create a new self, we can see that this has the ability, this new reality which we create within the values of the Quran, have the ability to go through our physical death. Because physical death is by virtue of aging and being physical. And the self which we create within ourselves is different, because we make efforts as we experience our life and we create our own self. And the self which is created based on what is given in the Quran is totally different. So this is the background I have, and that journey is still continuing. I'm still working on the Quran, and the number of questions which still need to be answered, I'm still looking at that. But it has helped me, the Quran has helped me to increase my consciousness. The vastness of consciousness increases, and also the level of its understanding increases. Intellectual level increases. I should say one attains or achieves Quranic consciousness. So we can say there is an emotive consciousness, then there is a rational consciousness, and then there is a Quranic consciousness. So essentially, one goes into the Quranic consciousness, which helps to understand the other consciousnesses. So this is the position of the Quran.
The Quran has put emphasis on Iman. In your view, what is the reason for this, and how does it differ from belief or faith?
This was initially when I came towards the Quran, this thing came to my mind, that what is belief and what is faith. And then I studied some part of the critical thinking, and belief is that it is my belief. It is exclusive to myself. I can believe in something, it may not be true, but as far as my belief is concerned, it is a fact. I'm believing in something. For example, I can believe that miracles can happen. But miracles may not happen, but my belief is genuine. But miracles, as far as the miracles is concerned, that is not a fact. So knowledge is when it becomes a fact. So belief becomes a fact. And when belief becomes a fact, it becomes knowledge. Faith has a similar connotation. These two terms are used within the religious context. Quran talks about Iman. Iman is a process of achieving conviction over a period of time into 5 things. There is a verse in the Quran 2:177 which says that facing east or facing west will not give you righteousness, will not provide you the vastness of your consciousness. It will not broaden your consciousness unless you have Iman. The consciousness will provide you that vastness which you want through Iman in Allah, in the hereafter, in the forces of nature, in the books of revelation, and Anbiya are the messengers of Allah who brought the message. Now I'll go through it one by one. Allah means that Allah, because I have a self, so I need a higher self to serve as a model. Because if I have a similar self whom I'm following, that the best is that I can become like him or her. But if I have a higher model which is infinitely developed, then that answers my acquisitiveness, what will happen in the hereafter. Because when I can develop myself here up to an extent, then that opportunity for development will continue in the hereafter, because Allah will still stay as my model. So Allah as a model given in the Quran is through His attributes. He has introduced Himself in the Quran that these are my attributes. Once you follow these attributes, once you manifest these attributes, you can solve human problems. Then is the hereafter linked with that the life is not going to end with your physical death. The Quran says that every self will taste death. So tasting means, what do? We taste food and move on. So once we taste death, we will move on to the next life. So next it says is that the forces of nature are there to help you. So we should not only recognize these forces of nature, which includes our psychological forces as well, and all the invisible and visible forces, so that we can harness these forces for the benefit of mankind. Presently we are exploiting or harnessing these forces for the benefit of few. Whereas these forces are meant to be used for the good of everyone, because if our aim of life is to go beyond death, and the life is going to go beyond that, then what is the hurry? Why do we accumulate? Why do we do injustices? We don't need to do that. And the next is the revelation. The position of the revelation is that human beings progressively acquire knowledge, whereas revelation gives us the facts right the first day. It tells us, if you follow this system, which is as an external guidance, then you will achieve what you wish to achieve in this life, and this will also give you life in the hereafter. So revelation is our need, but it is an optional need. By using our free will, by using our intellect and reasoning, we can understand it. What is in the revelation we cannot produce, because it is the product of an infinite intellect, that is Allah. But we can understand it using our intellect and reasoning. In a way, I can say that this is the whole reality which has exposed itself from Allah's side for our benefit. So that is what revelation is. Revelation is not the product of human intellect. And we can verify it. Read the Quran and you will see statements over there which human beings cannot think of. For example, the law of requital, that every human being is accountable for his deeds. We don't want to be held accountable, but the fact is this law is working. I have a choice to follow path A, path B, or path C, but I don't have a choice to follow path A and get the results of B or C. So whatever path we follow, the results will be the same. Allah's law of requital will make sure we get those results. For example, if we have divisions in the world, then that means we are following the path of divisions. And the last one is messengers of Allah. They brought the same revelation over a period of time. Those revelations became contaminated, and finally now this revelation of the Quran has come for whole of mankind for rest of the time, and it's a whole reality, and no more messengers from Allah are going to come, because there is no need. Everything in the universe is following laws, and it is based on needs. They are not at random. If we look at anything, any phenomena of nature, or even look at our own body, we eat food, rest of the things are done by the body. And similarly, in our intellect, we make choices. And whatever choices we make, we get the results. We have made wrong choices, that is why we have a messy world. And in this verse next is, وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ, that after you have acquired this Iman, the Quran does not leave things there. It explains that why do you need to follow it. It says that you should spend money on others even if you have love for it. So that means if we are not doing this, we haven't got the Iman. So see, cause and effect is there. So every verse, if we look through the Quran, cause and effect is all along working. Nations did this, they suffered. Nations did this, they prospered. So law of requital is working throughout the Quran, that every cause has an effect. Cause and effect in the physical world, cause and effect in the intellectual world. And both are interconnected.
Connected with Iman, the Quran emphasizes on doing righteous deeds as specified with it. Why these two are interdependent?
The reason is that just getting a prescription will not treat the patient, will not alleviate his illness. He has to follow the instructions and take the medicine as he has been told. So over here the Quran links the two, that first you acquire, for example, I will go through one process of going over the Iman. In my own case, for example, I looked at the word and its problems. I wanted to understand those problems. So I read the Quran, I read other books as well. I also read the books of psychology and some on philosophy as well, that how the human intellect has reached this stage and what is its state of development. I looked at the YouTube videos as well, and I came to this conclusion that humans have these limitations. And then I acquired Iman as the Quran has stated. And I got the evidence for each one of these 5 elements. And through the books written by Parwez, like Human Self and Allah, the hereafter, life in the hereafter, what does the Quran say? Or what is Islam? So through that, and using my own intellect and reasoning, I came to this conclusion that this Iman, which is developing the conviction, is based on evidence. Now, if I have acquired the evidence, then I need to practice it. If I don't practice it, then I cannot understand human problems. And if I don't do deeds, which is part of law of requital, then I'm not get myself developed. It's like this, that if I want to go to London from Glasgow, then I need to get up, get out, buy a ticket, get on the train, and then we'll reach London. If I keep sitting at home and all the time I say, I want to go to London and do nothing, I will never be able to develop myself. Because practically demonstrating what we are convinced of is essential part of cause and effect. So people sometimes don't understand this. They say, I have acquired the Iman and that is more than enough. I'm doing all the rituals and that should be more than enough. Self simply cannot develop. That is why in the Quran there are verses again and again to those who have acquired Iman to do good. There's a verse, I think it's 63rd chapter at the end, if I correctly remember. What it says is that let your riches, let your families, let your wealth, possessions not divert you from the remembrance of Allah. Spend something for your hereafter. Dispose of your wealth. In fact, in 9th chapter, it says Allah has purchased the life and possessions of those who claim to have Iman. And in return, He will give them a better life, or stated as paradise. So, parting with the possessions of life and the life and making effort in this path is part of self-development. If we don't make an effort, how are we going to change the world? If we want to change, if we want the world to let the way it is, then we just keep playing along and not oppose it. But human beings need to be warned, human beings need to be told. And that spirit or that motivation can only come firstly by knowing the problems, then getting involved in solving the problems according to our own efforts and means, and then spreading the message widely and telling everyone across the world, look, our path is wrong. So our complaint is wrong when we see wrong in the world and do nothing. That is not an option. And people who are rich, they sometimes also don't understand the consequences of their action. They might think that this is the way life is, because that's the way they are brought up. So somebody has to interject and go and tell them, like Bernie Sanders in the US elections is raising these issues, the rich are becoming richer and poor are becoming poorer. But over here, again, he's not bringing out the fact of what is the purpose of life. He just thinks, he also probably thinks that the life ends with death, or he wants to keep his views to himself. Whereas we have to project this view that factually life is going beyond death. So stop, reflect and think and change your course.
Many people ask a question that if people do righteous deeds but do not have Iman, what will be their state in the hereafter according to the Quran?
The Quran is very clear on that. When it emphasizes on Iman, it is essentially asking us to change our outlook towards life and not just believing into it, but change it based on evidence and conviction. I take it in a way that once we acquire the Iman, we look at the world differently. We look at the problems right at the fundamental level, that where the issues are. And also, when we have Iman, because the hereafter is part of that, we look at it how to change our inner reality. And when our inner reality, that is our thought process changes, our outlook changes, we look at the values and we manifest those attributes, we essentially become different people inside it. And unless we become that, I can't see that any other self can have what this particular self has achieved. And since this word is a word of fulfilling our desires, our intellect is helping us to achieve our desires. If we are fulfilling our desires, then the desires after having Iman are totally different than without Iman. And by saying that there is no life beyond death, we are essentially taking out that possibility of another life. And if we take that possibility out of our equation of life, then essentially our self is not developing on those lines. Because one of the things which Quran points out is that the state in which we leave this world just before death, we will be entering into the next life exactly in that state. So if that state, in which we have left this life and we have moved on to the next life in exactly the same state, and if that self does not meet the requirement of the environment of next life, because it is essentially a seed, then it is not going to grow. And if it is not going to grow and life becomes static, then it is a very, very unhappy life. And it is not something Allah is going to do to us. It is we ourselves have decided right in this life that I don't want to have a life in the hereafter. Because when I say there is no life in the hereafter, essentially I don't want a life in the hereafter. Then it is unfair on Allah that despite my not wanting a hereafter, He gives us a hereafter. So all these concepts where people say that it depends on His mercy and on His forgiveness, these concepts are not in line with the Quran, at least not to my knowledge. Because what I have studied extensively, the book on the hereafter explains it, that whatever we have earned in this life, that is what we will have right after death. So the hereafter of the Quran starts here, right here, because the Quran says that let everyone see what he or she has sent forward for his or her tomorrow. And in the Quranic terms, tomorrow is not just tomorrow, it is the rest of the life. So whatever we do now, it has an impact on our future.
Related to this, another question. What about those people who claim to have Iman but do not do righteous deeds or do these deeds under external compulsion or emotively react to events and help others?
This is an interesting question because you might have seen that when there is an earthquake, for example, and people are suffering all over the world, the aid starts coming in and people help them. And if there was no earthquake, all this spare money, which now they have made it available as an emotive reaction, was available with them, but they never gave it to them. Similarly, we have seen that first we have a big gap between rich and poor, and then the rich, they establish charities, and these charities start helping those poor. And we have a self-respect and dignity. When I spread my hand in front of another human being, this is degrading. Why should I have to live in a system where I have to spread my hand in front of another one for just basic needs? And if my basic needs are not met, how I'm going to meet the needs of myself? Abraham Maslow said that once the basic needs are met, that is where then the next needs come in. So the needs of the self are as essential, as compulsory as the basic needs. So over here is that we should look at our whole system, and Quran says that, for example, in 85th verse of 2nd chapter, it says that first you turn the people out of their homes, and then you go, and when they are picked up by the enemy and others, then you go and get them released and think it is a charitable work. And it says very, very sternly that what is the punishment for such acts is humiliation in this life and nothing in the hereafter. So what is happening in our world is there's so much poverty and deprivation and exploitation which can easily be solved if we start looking at the life that it is going to go beyond death. There is a hereafter, and that will bring calmness within us, this whole competitiveness, because the Quran has said compete in good, compete in righteousness, don't compete in greed, don't compete in accumulating money, don't compete in wrong things. And whereas in the world there is a competition going on, there is a race going on, and a lot of people say that the world has become very mechanistic, very materialistic. And it has caused its own problem, because when we follow the wrong path, it will make us unhappy. There is no way we can escape it. So this is the reason that Iman is absolutely essential, because our thoughts come first, then our deeds. And if our thoughts are not right, then the subsequent deeds are not going to produce those desired results. So if we think we need a hereafter, then we will need to have Iman. If we think we don't need hereafter, that is fine, our choice. Then we don't need Iman. We can live this life the way we like it.
Where can one find further details of the Quranic Islam?
I think the book, like What is Islam? Islam, a challenge to religion, the life in the hereafter, what does the Quran say, the human self and Allah. And I'm also translating another book by Ghulam Ahmad Parwez, which is titled Human Self and Iblis. Iblis is Satan in the Quranic terms. The Quran has used two terms, Iblis and Shaitan. And Iblis is the manifestation of our hopelessness. And over here, hopelessness means hopelessness from Allah's guidance, that we think Allah will never guide us, or there is no Allah in the first place. And Shaitan means our emotive feelings and sentiments within us, like revenge, which sometimes emotively we react to the things which we should not. And this is a problem, because we cannot redirect our emotions properly unless we have external guidance. There is a very interesting point in this book which I can share with you, is that human intellect has a problem, and the intellect is being finite or limitations. How do we live our life? Because we are progressively moving towards our death, our physical death, and we set a goal in front of us. Human intellect sets a goal. Once it reaches that goal or destination, it rests, sits down, and then thinks of another goal. And then it pursues that goal. And once it reaches that, sometimes it fails, sometimes it cannot achieve it collectively. I'm talking of even individually. And then by the time it achieves the next goal, we die and go away. Whereas the Quranic concept is that if our goal is, which the Quran has itself provided to us, is to develop ourselves and hold ourselves accountable on this path, then essentially we become extremely aware of our own thoughts and deeds. Once we become extremely aware of our thoughts and deeds, and the effect of our thoughts, our words and deeds on others, we become a better human being. We start developing ourselves, and once we have acquired Iman, we create essentially a new self and do a lot of righteous deeds. So in this process, our goal becomes infinite in front of us, because if life is going to go beyond death, then self-development and increase in consciousness, there is no limit. Quran does not lay any limit on righteousness, on increase in the consciousness and on the development of the self. So once we start following that path, and intellect becomes convinced of this path, then intellect will never let you sit idle. The life becomes dynamic, because now Allah is serving as a model and we are following that path, and there is a Quran, and as we are doing good deeds, these good deeds are producing results. Because good becomes good. And because we become in a way selfless, and we start moving towards resolving human issues, and maybe coming to this conclusion that we need a different system, the system which takes into account hereafter. All that desperation, all that hopelessness, all that crying we experience when we die, we will say, thank you very much, I'll see you over there. Because at a self's level, we are not going to die. So if we have acquired that kind of a new reality, that is where the life is. So these are totally different concepts, and hopefully, with these videos as well, these will make people think and question and use their reason.
Thanks for your time.
No, you're welcome, and I'm glad that I have shared these thoughts with you.